So I'm back again at home, dealing with the technology like lots of other people. I've also got a tractor going off in the field next door. So if you can hear something murmuring along in the background, then please just ignore that. I've got the pleasure today of reintroducing a chap called Joe Burns, who first worked with the Accountants Mastermind. I think it was about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Now, might even be longer ago than that. But during the course of that session, we had a massive number of questions, and that was before we was all working at home around the different ways that the Microsoft products work. And Joe has very graciously and kindly agreed to come back. Now, I emailed Joe last night a list of all the questions that you've asked when you registered. And I've emailed those across to Joe, and Joe has used a Microsoft product, which he will share with you in a moment, to collate those questions, and he's going to work through those questions for you. So if you have any questions as you go along, if you look in the center of your Zoom webinar screen, you should see a little box that's got a Q on it, and underneath it, you've got a Q&A. If you've got any questions, if you open up that box and post the questions in there, what we're going to do this time is I'm going to save those questions until the end of each section. So we're going to begin with forms, then move to flow, then look at SharePoint and OneDrive, and then finish off with Teams. So if you've got any questions around those that you would like answering, put them in the Q&A box, and at the end of each section, I'll then ask Joe those questions. If I can answer those questions because I know the answer, then I will bounce an answer back without having to draw Joe. And we can also then hopefully collate the questions together in order to make sure that we don't answer the same things at the same time. The session is also being recorded, and I'll make sure you get the question along. So, Joe, if you're around, hello, Joe, Jeff, hello, Kim, and hello, Andrew. If you can attempt to use the Q&A box as opposed to the normal chat box, that would be great. So, Joe, if you are there, as I've just introduced you, basically. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Simon Chaplin, I should say, and I run a network of accountants called the Accountants Mastermind Group. And as I said, about 4 weeks ago, we had a conversation around MS Teams, and I went out to the market and found the delightful and lovely Joe, who had gave up his time. And he has come back today in order to answer the follow-up questions and the questions that you have around that. So without further ado, I am going to turn my video off and my mic off, and I shall only be introducing Joe if there's anything that I feel that is urgent or important, and hand you over to the capable Joe Burns to share the information that you've asked for in the registration process. So over to you then, Joe.
Thanks, Simon. Simon, you can hear me, I take it clear?
I can hear you, yes. Excellent. Definitely. And
Thank you.
I'll confirm I can see your screen as well when you go with that, Joe. So
okay, no problem. Thank you. So thanks for joining me in the amazing New York background. Obviously, got to take advantage of the Zoom background feature. Thanks for joining me, and for those who were on the Teams webinar a couple of weeks ago, thank you for rejoining me. For anyone who wasn't on that session, and I'm coming across to you for the first time, that quick introduction. Name's Joe, as Simon's introduced. I run a couple of businesses. One is called 5BI Limited, which is all about process improvement and using technology to help make business more efficient. And the other is an IT business called Reformed IT. So that's some background. That's why I'm coming to you and talking to you about these Microsoft products and features. I am very Microsoft driven, so I know there's a few questions about things to do with Zoom and integrations with things like Google and Trello, and I'll cover those best I can. But my specialisms really is in the Microsoft suite, and that's what I'll be taking you through today. Now we are going to be going through. We've got a lot to get through, and we're going to aim for around about an hour. I'm happy to run over as long as Simon is, and you guys still want to be asking questions. But we're going to be covering Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Flow, Microsoft Teams, and we're going to be touching on subjects such as SharePoint and OneDrive as well. And I've gathered all of your questions together so that we can keep this content as relevant as possible and answer as many of your questions as possible during this time. Now, just to say that we are still scratching the surface with this. I'm going to show you some of the techniques and the technologies available in things like Flow and Forms, but there's a load more content. fact, I did a training session for a company called Smith Cooper last week, and we spent a whole day exclusively on flow on its own, and they'd already got experience with it. So if you can just appreciate that we are scratching the surface, we can't cover everything in an hour, but I'm happy to take questions if there's more detailed questions after, and just if you can go through Simon and let him know that you'd like to arrange a one-to-one, and we can do that. So let's get.
Brilliant, Joe. What we'll do if you don't is if you give out your details at the end, and then on the recording, and if we'll post them in the chat box as well, if anybody else would like to, so that everybody's got the details, that'd be great.
That's fine, thanks. Right, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you the. Basically, I've started with a Microsoft Planner option here. So I took all of the questions that came through when everybody registered on the Zoom meeting, and I've dropped them into Microsoft Planner. So straight off the bat, one thing, if you're not already using it and you want a feature to log tasks and assign them in a very Trello or Kanban board type method, then Microsoft Planner is great for this. And I usually, when I'm structuring a talk, I quite often use Post-it notes. So I'll write the subjects on a Post-it note and I'll put them in some sort of order. Instead of doing that last night with these questions, what I did was I used Planner to basically act as these Post-it notes. So to get to Planner, anybody that's already using Office 365 will be able to use this functionality. If you go to tasks.office.com within your web browser, you will get something that looks like this, and you can create a new plan. And as you can see, I've just done Teams, Flow, and Forms webinar as the title. So from here, you can see there's a load of options across called buckets. So in this, what I've done is I've put all the questions in on the left-hand side, and then I created a bucket by doing add new bucket. And I created great questions, cover this, and generic, because quite often there were things that, you know, covers the whole subject on its own, how flow works and things like that. Then you can see these little green and purple and blue blobs explaining what subject each one of these questions was related to. And the reason I've done that is up in the top right-hand corner, I have the option to filter and narrow down based on priority, due date, and also label. And I'm going to take you through each of these subjects one by one. And we're going to start with Microsoft Forms. So I'm filtering these lists down to just Microsoft Forms at the moment. And you can see that I've got multiple labels on some of these questions. And to add a label, you can add a task just by simply hitting add task, put in a description, hit enter, it creates your new task. From here, you can open this up and you can choose the progress, the priority, which bucket it's going into, add any notes, and you can also add a label. So whether this is to do with Teams or Flow or SharePoint, you can label it there. Equally, you can use the three dots, the ellipsis, and add your labels from here as well. With these tasks, you can also drag and drop into various different buckets. And I'm just going to delete that task. So that's a quick overview of why I'm using Planner. It made it easy for me to kind of put these questions in some sort of order that I can break down and filter down to. So we're going to start on Microsoft Forms. So what is Microsoft Forms? Microsoft Forms is basically an easy way of collecting information. And with me, I've got Forms Pro, but for everybody else that's out using there, you'll probably be using the standard version of Forms that comes included with Microsoft Office at no additional cost. So this looks very much like this. So when you hit New Form, it gives you a blank canvas where you can start to build a dynamic form really, really quickly and really easily. And through this process, what I want to do is, because I got a lot of questions saying how to use forms to gather information from clients. I would like to understand how to use forms more to collect onboard information, how to use forms and integrate it with other software. That was a common question that was asked on the signups. So I figured that with a lot of accountancy practices, that process of taking client information If it's done via a PDF, a fillable PDF, which people can do and then email back, that's one way. Some practices might still be using forms where they send a PDF and it needs to be printed, filled out by hand, scanned in, emailed back to you, which is a long process for your client to have to do. So Microsoft Forms makes it really easy to collect a lot of information without putting a lot of effort in the first place. So I'm going to go through an example. So you can go in, create a new form, and here we've got the title. So if we want to call this an onboarding form for new clients, you can add a description in here. So we just need a few key bits of information from you. You can put whatever you want in there. You can put your privacy information in there as well, and that'll appear at the top of the form. You've also got this handy feature here, which is insert image. So this is how quick and easy it is to build a form within Microsoft Forms. Is we can go to insert an image, and from there we can search for, let's see if we can find socks or Simon. Some random, there we go. So let's get an image for pull your socks up, Simon, and we can add that instantly into our form. At any point, we have this preview option in the top right-hand corner that shows us what the form would look like to our clients filling the forms in. So if we hit preview, we can now see we've got an image, we've got the title of the form and the description with no questions in right now. So also we've got this green color for the form. If your branding isn't green and you want to choose your own color, you can hit theme, and we can use various different backgrounds, or we can choose another color from the options, or we could equally hit the plus and choose a custom color, and you can put in a hex code there or a custom image. For a hex code, that's kind of HTML type code. You can get it from various different options online, but if you need any help with that, let me know. But we're just going to choose that color for the time being. So you can start to build a theme, build a color, put your logo onto the form, and the key bit is adding questions to the form. When I clicked plus, you can see that it's automatically come up with some recommended ideas of what you might be trying to collect from this form. So what is your department? How would you rate the overall onboarding process? And you can see there's different types of questions, from text fields to date fields to ratings. So here you can see all of the possible options that you can do, and the drop-down arrow gives you even more. And you can even do something called sections. And with sections, what you're doing is you're blocking a load of questions so that they've got some sort of organized structure. So I'm going to quickly whip up a form. So we might need to know what is your full name, is the first question. We've got a little toggle button here, which is required. If you've got required on, then they will need to answer that question before they move on or submit the form. If it's off, they can choose to ignore that. Pretty simple. Long answer means that they can put multiple lines of text in rather than just one line of text. So you'd use long answer if you're asking for a description of something more than just a few words. And again, on the ellipsis at the bottom corner, you can add a subtitle to give them more information about what they need to fill in. So a bit more information, and you can also use restrictions. Now the restrictions in Microsoft Forms are fairly basic. You've only got like number options, greater than, equal to, between, etc. I believe that will be expanded on in the future. But you can turn restrictions on, particularly if you're looking for a number as an answer instead of a piece of text. So we can go through what is your full name. You can add questions like company name so that you can collect their company name. You might also then want to know what type of company they are. So type of company. And from here, you may want to ask them, are they a sole trader? Are they a limited company? So we can add more options by clicking the option at the bottom. Are they a public limited company? Or are they a limited liability partnership. Okay, so you can ask a choice question, and from there they can choose one of those selections. At any point, like I said, if you hit preview, you'll see what how your form is taking shape, what it looks like, how it would be for them to fill these answers in. Now, if we get to the choice option here, you can see type of company, and we have to select one of those options. As soon as we check one, it moves away from the other. Now, where there might be a selection of things, but multiple answers are possible, you can still do that with a choice. It's just a case of checking multiple answers. Now, at that point, it changes the boxes from round to square. And if we go to preview now, you would be able to select multiple options. Not that you would with that particular question, but I wanted to demonstrate that. So you can go through, you can ask various questions like dates as well. So VAT period, end date, something along those lines. And you then get a nice styled date option where they can select a date. So that's how you build a form. It's as simple as that. And you can see from the top option, you've got what it looks like on a computer and also what it looks like on a mobile phone. So these forms are already designed to handle mobile layouts. So if you used to send a link to a form to somebody and they were opening it on a mobile or a smartphone device, you can see that it's still really easy to use and control on their mobile device, making it a lot easier for them to fill out than a PDF, for example, which would be difficult to complete on a mobile. So that's why Microsoft Forms is so great. Bear in mind that it's very much one-way information. There's no integration here with databases or back-end systems. So this is really good if you're collecting information for the first time, but it's not as good if you're trying to interact with a database and using a form to interact with a database. You've also got this option of sections. So if we've gone through the basic information and we now want to ask information about payroll, we could create a new section and call this payroll information. And now we can add questions into here for payroll. Reference number or something. And again, you can always make these required questions or not. And you can start to build a form with multiple sections and multiple headers. So in this section, we might have basic information and payroll information. And if we go to preview now, you'll start to see the structure. So we've got the basic information, and you can answer all those questions, although none of these are required. So even if we hit next at this point, it will still move forward. And we're now in the payroll information section. So we can answer all the questions about that as well. So that's how that works. So I've done, rather than going through and building the entire form process here, to show you this process and how you can use all of the Microsoft Suite to try and help automate some of this stuff. What I've done is, when it loads, so right, in group forms, I've created a client onboarding form, and I've used some information. I've kind of structured the form in much the same way that I would expect an accountancy practice to want to pull information from clients. Things on the go slow.
Joe, just while that open, I've got a question on group forms. Do you have to set up a form as a group form if you want other people in your organization to be able to edit it?
Yes, for other people to be able to edit it, it would either have to be a group form or it would have to be shared with the person so that they can edit it. Yeah. So ideally use group forms. And the reason I've done this one as a group form is because I've linked it into Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to show you how those two things like collate with each other, essentially. So yes, I would typically do it as a group form. So here we've got a form that's in a group form, and I'll show you why in a moment. And I've gone through and I've created more of a structure to this form. So full name, email address, company name, type of company, company registration, VAT registered, and what's the VAT number? You know, do you submit that quarterly or annually? And you see on some of these questions, where you get to, are you VAT registered, yes, no, If I choose no, I'm not going to ask them the VAT number. So one of the downsides with a lot of traditional forms is that you have loads of questions, even if half of them are irrelevant. So with Microsoft Forms, what we can do is something called branching. And branching means that we can only get people to answer the questions that are relevant based on answers they've already given. And by that, what I mean is, are you VAT registered? I'm just going to go to the ellipsis, the dots in the top corner, hit the branching option, and I'll show you what I've done here. So type of company, this is a similar question. So if they're a sole trader, they're not going to have a company registration number. So we're going to skip asking company registration information. But if they're a limited company, LLP, PLC, they're going to have a company registration number, and we can link it to that question. Are you VAT registered? If they say yes, we're going to take them down to question 7. What is your VAT number? If they say no, we're going to skip questions 7, 8, and 9, which is all to do with VAT, and we're going to take them next to the payroll question. Okay, so that's how it works in the back end, and it is as simple as going to any of these questions, dropping down based on the answer. So if they choose yes, go to what is your VAT number? It's that simple. Okay, and show you how that performs when it's actually used. Here you can see the onboarding form, and it's asking for name, email address, company name, type of company, and it stops because it doesn't know yet what other questions it's got to ask. If we choose sole trader, the next question is, will we be doing payroll on your behalf? But if I choose limited company, it then asks for the company registration number, so we can fill that bit of information in. Are you VAT registered, yes or no? If they choose no, it doesn't ask any more VAT questions. If we choose yes, then it asks what the VAT number is, and do you submit VAT quarterly or annually, and when is your next VAT period due. So that helps to eliminate unnecessary questions for people, and rather than them getting confused as to whether they're supposed to put something in, it makes it really clear. And that, as I say, is just using the branching option to the top corner. Now, you can also branch into a section. So at the bottom, we've got a question that says, will we be doing payroll on your behalf? And if yes, it takes them to section 2, payroll information. If no, it takes them to section 3, and it skips section 2 completely. So again, just to show you that in the real environment, if we go through and answer sole trader, we don't need to answer the company registration number, or we'll be doing payroll. If we hit yes, and then I have to answer these questions as well because they're required with the star. If I say yes and next, we're now in the payroll information section. But if I go back and choose no and hit next, it skips the payroll section altogether, and it's now just asking us about annual accounts and corporation tax. So now the authentication code and the UTR number. So if we fill these bits of information in, we can now submit the form. I will go through and actually do a full demonstration of this form because what we've done is I've taken this information and I want to try and get the responses so that we can get them back to our team and use it in our team. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways of using this information. But firstly, before I move past forms and onto the next section, I want to show you the share button in the top corner of the screen. If you hit share, then at the moment we have this option, which is anyone with the link can respond. And then we've got this link underneath. So this is important. By default, it will, when you create a new form, it will do only people in my organization can respond. I believe that's the default. But if that's selected, then only people with Office 365 accounts who are controlled by your tenant, your organization, they're the only ones, once they sign in, that will be able to fill this information out. Now, when you're doing a client onboarding, you want anybody out and about with any account to be able to fill this in, almost at random and anonymously, which is why we ask for things like name and email address. So in order to do that, you need to make sure that anyone with the link can respond is selected. And then you can copy that link, which is there, and you can send that to your customers, and they will be able to, via a web browser, be able to fill this form out, okay? Also, you can share to collaborate. So in the question earlier about the group, you can create a link and send it to somebody else, and they can interact with this form as well. And I've done this in the past with third parties. So if you've got an external party that needs to edit the form and keep the form on top of the form and what's in it, you can create a share to collaborate with anyone with an Office 365 work or school account. Okay, and then you can send them that link. Or equally, you can make it so that only people in the organization can view and edit it. So that's possible as well. The other options you've got here is that's just a vanilla link. You can also create a QR code, and that's a quick and easy way of sending or putting it on a printed piece of literature. So if you want feedback forms and stuff like that from on-premise, you could have a big QR code that says leave us feedback and have that visible. You've also got Iframe, so if you talk to your web designers and give them this information, they can embed this form into a web page, or you can simply email the link out to somebody just by clicking one button there. Oh, I can't get rid of that. There we go. So yeah, that's ways you can share your Microsoft Forms with other people. But like I say, if you want external parties to be able to fill it in, you need to make sure anyone with the link can respond. So I'm going to move on to when people fill that link in. And in fact, let me just copy this. And if people want to have a look at what it looks like to them, just if I can bring this back up. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to do it. There we go, chat. All right, so all participants, I'm going to copy that link into to everybody in the Zoom meeting. So if you were to click that link, you'd basically get the form available to fill in yourselves without having to sign in or anything. And you'll see the structure of that, and you can start to play with those, the branching options. So if you check limited company versus sole trader, you'll see the difference in that, and you can start to fill that information in. In fact, if anybody who does want to sit there and fill the information in with a genuine email address and name, with the rest of the information being just made up, that's fine, because it will help us demonstrate the next bit of the example. So once the form is filled in, you can see a responses option as well at the top. And with the responses, you can see that this structure here is very much around feedback forms. So it gives you nice little charts and graphs. And these are really good for feedback forms where you're asking for very much yes, no questions or information about how well you've done or ratings. But it's not very good to look at for your team to try and take the information and do something with it, add it to a system or act on it in any way. It doesn't look very good like that. But you still have some other options. So you've got view results, which gives you, so Simon did an example for me a moment ago. So you get all of the feedback in a very structured, organized, paper-based option, which you can then print off, but that's a bit old school, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest that is the best way of dealing with it. But you've also got this option to open in Excel. So if we hit open in Excel, it'll then open the Excel workbook with any of the responses in it, and you can see all of the responses there, which might be a nicer way of getting the information and doing something with it. But we're trying to educate people on how to use Microsoft Teams and keep all the information in one place rather than going all over the shop to try and get this information. Having to go to forms and click on that is a lot of steps. So one of the things you can do is you can make sure that the Excel sheet that we've just opened is in one of your files. So, oh, thanks, Lorraine. So if we go into our Teams channel, so we've got I've created a client onboarding channel here. And what we could do is we could add a tab. And in that tab, I want an Excel sheet. And under my client onboarding, I've got client onboarding form and the Excel responses to those. I don't want to post about it in the channel, and I want to link that to a tab, and I'm going to hit save. Okay, it's called the tab Excel. I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call it client responses. Okay, and I'm going to hit save on that. So now within Microsoft Teams, I've easily got a Microsoft form that then collates the information and puts it into an Excel sheet that I can then interact with, copy and paste the information out of, and do whatever I want with it. I can also hide columns, delete entries from here. I can edit things in this Excel spreadsheet, but every new form registration will link it to a line in this Excel sheet. Okay, hopefully that's all making sense so far. Before I move on, Simon, on this point, I'm just conscious that there might be some questions related to that particular piece of information.
Yeah, I've got a number of questions, some of which are yes or no, I think, and then we might show them again next time. But if I just, so the form that you've just shared in the chat box, Joe, can people pinch that and transfer it onto their own?
If they want a pinchable version, then yeah. I can do that as well. Let me have a look. Share. So share a link to duplicate. Anyone with this link can duplicate it. Copy. Right. So this second one, in the second option in here, is going to be one that they can steal. Okay. Steal this. Okay, so that one, they should be able to duplicate it. If it doesn't work, let me know and I'll find another way, but that should work as a way of copying it.
Excellent, thank you. So Suzanne, that's the one that you want. Is it possible for you as the creator to upload a file into the form? Actually, this is the wrong way around because I've got this question twice. So yeah. If we send that form to a client, is it possible for them to upload a document into the form, such as for example, a passport photograph or something like that?
No, not at the moment. So what they have done in Microsoft Forms fairly recently, so if I go to add new, and you can see that, there's this file upload option here. Yeah. Okay, it says not available when form is shared externally. Change your setting to only people within the organization can respond. So at the moment, they have included a file upload in Forms, but it's only available for people within the Office 365 setup. Okay, however, to answer that question, when I move on, I'm going to show how we use Flow to automate the process to make that bit a bit easier for collecting information, including documents. So hopefully I'll cover that.
And then the last question, and I think I know why this has come up as well, but can clients save and close the form so they can search for different information and then provide it later?
Yeah, unfortunately not. That is the bit, there's some key bits like that are missing from this. So when people have opened the form and if they're filling it out, as long as they keep that browser session open, it will save what you've done. But no, they can't resume information that they've already provided. But as we go through the flow example, you can collect stages of information. So you could ask for some more information, then log it against almost database in a SharePoint list, and then ask for more information further down the line. So no, not exactly saving it and going back to it, but as long as they don't close the browser, it will keep that information. So yeah, unfortunately not.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. That's the last question. Other than to say that Suzanne says, thank you very much, that saves me hours of work for that link.
Good.
So
Good.
You're a hero.
Yeah, good. Well, we've only just started, so.
Well, yeah, we've been going for 35 minutes, Joe, so I'm just conscious of the time as well.
Oh, God, yeah. Okay, so, right, let's move on to I want to show the flow example that I was just talking about. So what we can do is when that information is submitted in a form, we can use Microsoft Flow to automate certain aspects of it. Now, before I go too far into showing you exactly what I've done to automate this form, I want to kind of cover Flow generally and explain what Flow is and how it works. So when we're saying Flow, Microsoft have actually changed its name to Power Automate. So that's going to confuse things because when you look on your options for your apps available in Office 365, you won't actually find anything called Flow now. It's called Power Automate, but a lot of the things that they reference, such as the address, still says Flow. When you in it, it says Flow. So Power Automate and Microsoft Flow is the same thing. They've just renamed it to Power Automate. So just to get that confusion covered off. And what Flow is it's an automation platform. So it allows you to take certain triggers. So it's like if this, then that. If something happens, then do this with it. Okay, so that's how you create a flow. And a lot of the questions on the planner to do with Flow were relating to how to get started in Flow and how to have a look at these things. So how Flow works, how to get started, best place to start. So what I would say is the best place to start with Flow is to look at some of these templates. So if you log in again to your Office 365 and go to flow.microsoft.com or choose Power Automate on the apps option, then you can hit templates. And the good thing about templates is it will give you a load of pre-configured flows that you can just steal and use yourselves. So save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive for Business, send myself a reminder using the button app on the mobile. There's various different examples here. So record form responses in Sharepoint, which is an example that I'm going to show you anyway. But you can literally just click on these options and it will help you to build that particular flow. So it needs to connect to Microsoft Forms and Sharepoint. But once you've done that, if you hit continue, it will create the basic skeleton of the flow for you. So then it asks you to pick a form. And if you pick the form that you've done, then you can start to build this out. And it makes it a lot easier rather than doing everything manually. Okay, so take a look at the templates. It's a great place to start. It gives you loads of examples. And the other thing is that across the top, it almost sections them out for you. So featured, productivity hacks and automation you can do with productivity. If we look down here on the ellipsis again, you've got social media. So if somebody's involved in marketing and social media and you want to manage Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, there might be ways of doing that where you control those elements using Flow or Power Automate. So that's the place to start. Go to templates, start to get an idea of what's possible in Flow and start to try these things out, okay? But one of the examples I'm going to give to you, I can't go through step by step, obviously because of time, on exactly how we do all of this, but I am going to show you quickly, if my computer catches up. I'm going to show you one of these flows that are built based on the collection of information for the client onboarding and how we can automate certain aspects of the process so that your client can get more information and that you don't have to manually then send them an email saying, great, we've got your information. Can I ask you some more questions? So I've got this demo onboarding flow here, which we're just going to go into. I'm just going to edit that. Oh, one failed. Interesting. So the problem with live demonstrations is when your machine goes on a go slow because it knows I'm trying to demonstrate things. Just while that loads. So the starting point for this flow is this information. So when somebody fills in this form, the client onboarding form, it's going to trigger a flow to go through and take all this information and do something with it. Okay, and so you can see the steps on the flow here. So flows are always triggered by something happening. So in this case, when a new response is submitted on that form, and I've taken the form ID, which is up here in the address bar. So I've taken that form ID and I've said, get the response details. So pull the information from the form and then create an item in a Sharepoint list. So I've created within Sharepoint, and some people have asked about integration with Sharepoint. I've created a Sharepoint list here, which is basically just like a glorified Excel table. It has lots of columns across the top and bits of data that you can add in to here. So the person who filled the form out and put random company name and contact information, it couldn't send you an email, but with simplyadditions@gmail.com, sorry for disclosing information, but that email address will have been used to send back a notification of the fact that they've completed the form. And going back to the question about uploading documents, because I can't collect the information, those documents, through the Microsoft form itself, what I've done is sent an email back to the contact with a link that says secure document upload here. Okay, and just for an example of how that has worked, let's just go through, do this myself. So Joe Burns, email address, joe@form it.co.uk, quickly pull this out. Company name, Formed IT Limited. I'm just going to put sole trader, skip questions, no payroll, next, and I'm going to submit that form. Okay, when I submit that form, what's going to happen is that this flow is going to trigger. It's going to get the information, upload it into a Sharepoint list for me. It's going to send me a message on Microsoft Teams saying that somebody's filled the form out, and then it's going to send an email back to the person who's filled the form out saying hi, name, and generic text that I put in here. So to see all that working, if I go to Teams and I go to Posts, we've got a couple of those coming through. Let's just have a look. Okay, good example. Failed. I've broken something. But to give you an example of how that works, is an email comes through. Let's just pick my. Oh, come on. Like this. So an email will come through saying, thank you for filling out the form. Please could you send us the following documents, directors and employees, P45s or P6s, blah, blah, blah. And from there, they get a link. I'm just going to copy this hyperlink just to show you what it does. And in here, they've now got the option to upload files. So Joe Burns is requesting files for onboarding documents. Here they can select the files, upload a file, put in their name, just going to put a random name, and hit upload. That then sends me directly, without sharing them any other information. They don't need an Office 365 account. They just need to put their name in. And what that's done is it will have uploaded to OneDrive into client onboarding documents. You see that a file has been uploaded and it's named it at the start with the person's name, so I can identify who's uploaded that information. And so that file's arrived, and you can see it's modified by guest contributor. So that's a really easy way of collecting the files. And I know the question directly off that will be, how do you do that? So this only works in OneDrive. It doesn't work in Sharepoint at the moment. If I click on Files, and I'm going to do this from scratch, I'm going to create a new folder in my OneDrive, and I'm going to call it Guest Uploads. I'm going to create that. We've now got this Guest Uploads folder. If I tick the option on the left-hand side, and at the top you have the Request Files. If I hit Request Files there, it then says what files you're requesting. So enter a name. This is so that the person uploading those files can get a sense of what it is. So if we call this accounts documents or something like that, and hit next, it then creates you a link. So if you copy that link, you can now send that to customers and they can upload files directly into a OneDrive folder. But like I say, it doesn't work in SharePoint. It only works in OneDrive at the moment. But what you can do is you could then do that for the director or the manager's OneDrive account, and then share that folder with other people within the organization, so that when that information is uploaded, that they can get access to that. So you could use people within the organization with a specific link, or you can tell it to have specific people and add who you want to manage that folder as well. So that's how you can upload information from external parties without them needing any Office 365 account at all. Again, hoping that made sense.
Thank you, Joe. Can I just, Jonathan, I believe that's just answered your question. If not, can you share the question again? But I believe that's just answered about the upload link. And then just very quickly, yes or no, Joe, is the SharePoint Porters GDPR compliant?
Is the what?
The SharePoint portals. That's not easy to not easy to
Yeah.
say on a Monday dinner time. GDPR compliant.
Well, any link like that for uploads is going to be a secured link. So everything on Microsoft is all HTTPS. So as the information is sent, it's secured. The data is secured in Transmit because they're uploading it straight into a web portal over HTTPS. I would say it's more secure than sending over email. The reason it's more secure than sending over email is because when somebody sends an email, inherently email can be sent over non-secure communications. So at some point, somebody could intercept that data. With this, it's very difficult to intercept because it's all encrypted. So it's better from a security perspective. How the whole thing about GDPR compliance is then there's a whole ream of other questions about how it's secured, how permissions are structured. So, but the communication itself is more secure than email to do it in that way.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
And Lorraine says that that was an email marketing address, so it doesn't matter about disclosing it.
Okay.
Just to put your mind at rest.
Good, thanks. So yes, that's how you can automate things using Microsoft Flow. So I basically took that information and then fed it in, and I was able to post a message. So you saw on Microsoft Teams in here, you've got new client onboarding. So it basically notifies the team, the client onboarding team, that something's come through. And then we've got here a link to a response. So if we click on that link, it then takes me to the Sharepoint list where that information has been filled out as well. So as you can see, there's various different ways of taking the information from a form and using it. The simplest way of doing it was the original way, which is you just link to the Excel sheet and then tag that as a tab on your team, and then you can start to record the information and get access to it visually there. Okay, but if you want to add other automations like emails or Teams messages and things like that, you can use Microsoft Flow in order to do that. Okay, I'm just going to check back on here. So hopefully we've covered what is Microsoft Forms, how to use it to gather information, what's Flow used for, collecting onboarding information. So how does Forms integrate with other software? Forms doesn't really integrate directly with other software. The only way that you would be able to do that is by using Microsoft Flow and then using the various different Microsoft Flow connectors in order to connect to other software. So if I just go back to Flow, and I'll show you the connectors as well briefly. So here, there's a whole different connectors that Flow can integrate with. So Planner, Forms, all the Microsoft suite you'd expect to be in here, but there are other ones. So you can do Google. You might have seen there that there's Sign Now as well. So you can use connectors with like Gmail and Google Mail and Google Calendar. So there's third-party integrations here that you can use that aren't all Microsoft suites. But the thing with Microsoft Flow and Power Automate is that from a licensing perspective, anything that doesn't use a premium connector will already be included within your Office 365 license. So you can use Flow and you can use all of those techniques that I've just showed you without paying anything extra for Flow. If you do want to use premium connectors, such as, SQL servers or short URL sign requests, these kind of other things where it says premium, they will require a license per user to use Microsoft Flow. And the license at the moment, they've made it £10 per user per month for each user that's going to trigger a Flow. Okay. If anyone wants to talk to me more about Flow, like I say, I could go on for at least a day covering that, but hopefully that gives you enough to get started and start looking at that technology and how it might work for you. Let's go back to my list. So yeah, so that's how it would integrate with other software, and you can monitor responses in Teams like I've shown there. So that's cool. We've gone through a lot of the form stuff, and we've gone through a lot of the Flow. So if we just start looking at the questions for Teams. So one of the key questions I know regarding Teams was very much, difference between Microsoft Teams and Zoom. When would you use Teams over Zoom and things like that? So kind of want to cover that first of all. So if you're already using Office 365, then you already have a license. Sorry, Simon, have you got a question before I go into that?
No, I haven't. No, I think you're going to answer the question that I've got, so I'll let you think.
Yeah, no problem. So with Microsoft Teams, you've already got it in your Office 365 license. So if you're already paying for Office 365, and if I just show you here, so if you're using Office 365 Business Premium, Business Essentials, you can see Teams is included, okay? This is just the version of Office that you install with OneDrive included. But most people are using either Business Premium, Business Essentials, or maybe one of the enterprise packages at E1, E2, E3. And you're going to find that Teams is going to be included in any of those packages, okay? So because it's already included, you're not having, and you can do a more than 40-minute conference call, okay, with various different people. Whereas if you're only using the free version of Zoom, okay, that would cost you $11.99 per user per month, I think is about right. In order for you just to have a 3-person conference that lasts more than 40 minutes. You know, that functionality is already in Teams, so you might as well use it. Meeting recording and transcriptions are included. I know, again, you can get that technology in Zoom as well, but it's one of those features that straight off the bat, it's already there, and you can already use it. Teams does have comprehensive chat, file management, application, and meetings built in. So it goes a little bit beyond what Zoom does. Zoom is a great product. We're using it now, obviously. Zoom's a great product, really good for webinars, really good for video conferencing, and it will still always have a place for that. But what Teams does, it brings everything together. So it brings your meetings, your chat, your file management, all of your applications and plugins in one place. And like I say, Zoom is a great product. It's currently significantly better than Teams for webinars like this one, because Teams doesn't have a webinar functionality as such. It has live broadcasts, so you could do a live broadcast to lots of people, but you can't do all the webinar functionality like we've got here with the managing the delegates and adding people in and things like that. Sorry, so my connection's unstable. Simon, are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm still hearing you and still seeing you. So
okay, good. Zoom is easier to use for external parties for video conferencing, but you can use Teams for an external video conference. Some people think that it's only internal. It's not, and I'm going to show you that next. But myself and Simon, we were doing a demonstration. We had a Teams video call before we jumped onto the Zoom one today. So let me just break back and show you how that's done within Teams. So I'm going to open the Teams application. Okay, on your left-hand side on Teams, you've got the calendar option. So if you're scheduling a meeting, you can go into do a new meeting and schedule the meeting, and you'd basically pick a time, invite who you want to invite, and it would organize a team meeting and send them the link. If you want a one-off meeting straight away, you can hit Meet Now. Call it what you want to call it. Well, Meeting with Joe Burns will do. You can choose the settings and then hit Join Now. I'm a little bit conscious that it might try and overtake my stuff. So Join Now. Then you can go and invite somebody. So you can either type their email address in there, or you can copy the join info. And once you've copied the join information, you can go and create a new email, send it to whoever you want, and just paste in the join information. And that will send them the link to join the Teams meeting. Once it's sent it, they can just join. They would typically need a Microsoft account for that to work, but I think you can do anonymous access as well. So it can be relatively as straightforward as Zoom is to have an external video call. Now, the one thing with Teams, and this is mainly a question for your IT department or your third-party IT team, is that Teams does have, I need to get access to it again. Teams does have an admin portal that you would need to use as well, okay, to enable things like the anonymous or external access for those meetings. So let me just sign back in. So here, admin.teams.microsoft.com, you may or may not have access to this, depending on whether your IT department looks after this for you. But one of the things that people struggle with is they try and have a Teams meeting with an external recipient and it doesn't work. But that's because in the admin section, under meeting settings, you need to have the ability that anonymous users can join the meeting or guest users can join the meeting. And there is also meeting policies. And within meeting policies, there is a global, this will typically be the standard, global default. And here you've got the settings about who can enter and what they're allowed to do. So all the options are here, that anonymous people start the meeting, who can admit, And all of those options are in admin.teams.microsoft.com. Okay, so that's how you control that access as well.
Just while you do that, Joe, I've got a question. Do the external people have to be paying for Teams, or can they to access the meetings? No.
No, you can invite, again, a little bit like Zoom, where you can invite guests and have guests and anonymous users enter a Zoom call. You can do the same thing with Teams. However, at this point, it's relevant to add a correction, and I'm going to thank Andrew Coulson for letting me know about this. I kind of made a mistake in the last webinar saying about unlimited guest users for Teams, for the general use of guest users. He did bring up with me that there is actually a very hidden away licensing thing with Microsoft Teams, which is that you can have 5 guests for a team based on 5 guests per licensed user. So apologies for the mix-up on that last time, but that's just to clarify that in a Microsoft team, if you invite guests to it, you can only have 5 guests per licensed person. So that's that bit covered as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we've also covered, how to invite external clients to a video meeting. So we've just done a quick demonstration on that. And we've kind of covered the basis of why Microsoft Teams versus Zoom. And I wouldn't say at the moment Teams can do everything that Zoom can do. So you need to use those tools based on what the requirement is. For internal meetings and internal discussions, I prefer to use Teams because it's there. It will do the recording transcription with no other licensing required. But sometimes for big video calls and conferences and webinars, I'll favor Zoom over Teams.
And just to get clarity on that, Joe, does that mean that you can't have meetings with more than 5 external people?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It's just typically with the guest stuff. So one of the things that I try to things like the problem of having two businesses and 2 accounts on Office 365 accounts is it constantly asks me which one I want. So it keeps kicking me out. But 1 second. No, what that means is when I'm inviting guest users into a team, I'll get rid of that as well. So when I'm creating teams and I'm inviting guest users to it, machine's gone on the right, go slow. It's access to these. So last time I did like the client portal, and I was given the example that you could invite an external member of the team. But the only problem with that is that you can't do infinite guests. You would only be able to invite 5 guests per paying for client. Although to be fair with that one, we've actually got 5 guests. So yeah. So it's mainly to do that. But video calls and video conferencing, you can invite more than 5 people to a video call and have them join that video call. Again, they want to try and compete with Zoom, and they want to make sure that we can do all the same functionality in Teams that you can do in Zoom. It's not quite there yet. I think they will get there eventually, and they'll probably have the webinar functionality in the future as well. But yeah, you can have multiple guests in a video call. Is that okay? Does that answer that?
Perfect, Joe. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Right, let's just check in. So external clients, we've done benefits, integration. So somebody mentioned about integration with Slack and Trello, I think it was. So yeah, Trello. So this planner functionality is very similar to what you would expect to see in Trello. And so in very much the same way that you can integrate Trello with Slack, you can also integrate Planner with Teams. So just to demonstrate that, on our client onboarding, we might want a bit of a planner as to what the stages are for the onboarding. The interesting thing for whoever asked that question is there is also a Trello integration straight into Teams as well. So if you do want to continue to use Trello, you can integrate that directly into Teams. But as well as that, there is also a planner option. So you can go in and you can create a planner, and we'll call it client onboarding, and save. And then it creates us a Trello-like planner in Teams that everybody can interact with. So let's get back to the list. So hopefully that covers that off.
Just while I got you, Joe,
Yeah.
just while you do that, if we need more guests, can we pay for it? Can we upgrade to more than 5?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head for that one, so I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. I need to find out.
Google it.
Yeah, yeah. I would have to Google that.
Sorry, Farhad.
So yeah. So we've done that. We've shown how to do external meetings. I need to show you that. We've kind of covered the difference between Zoom and Teams. We've shown hopefully how to request file uploads from external parties. I'll cover that in a moment. And we've covered the Trello integration. So one of the questions that was asked was, can forms be integrated with Center? So there is no direct integration between forms or Flow and Center. But one of the things that I was going to mention is that with Flow, there's so much you can do if you think outside of the box. So if there's certain things that you want to do from Center and an automation task that's happening there, there's probably a way to bring it into your Office 365 suite, but we would need to cover that in way more detail and find out about the specifics on that as well. So yeah. Is it possible to automate reminders to encourage team members or clients to submit a form? Yes, you can do that. I've done that particular example with Flow before, but again, it would need a bit more of a conversation about exactly what you're trying to achieve with that as well. Can Microsoft work effectively as a practice management tool? It can do a lot of the things for you, but mostly these practice management tools are designed to work in a way that supports you and how you're already doing things. I would say facilitate the Microsoft products with it. So fill the gaps with the Microsoft products. And if you basically spent loads of time building something to do it, you might be able to get something similar, but I wouldn't necessarily rush out to try and do that. So what else have we got? Difference between chat and channels. That's a good question. So chat and channels. So the way I would explain that to people is that a team, sorry, I just reread the question. Difference between chat and channels. Okay, the difference between chat and channels is the fact that chat is mainly like either one-to-one or a group chat facility, whereas channels are designed to be public. Anybody in that team or that channel can have constant visibility of what's going on in there. So you can use them very much in a similar way because you can have a group chat, but I would suggest to create teams for the permission structure. So a team could be something like marketing, for example, and a channel might be things like website or social media. So a team is a structure and an organization of people and who is involved in it. And your channels would be the subject matters of what that team may communicate about and what they might need to group together. So like I say, marketing, you might have social media, you might have website, you might have advertising, subjects that have got different people adding information into. And like I said on the last webinar, we can now do private channels. So you can make a channel private and have a subset of users that can access that private channel. And again, just to recap, that is done by going in and managing the channel and making sure it's a private channel when you create it and adding the members and guests into that. So yeah, that's how you would do that. Someone asked, how do we switch teams on in Office 365? You kind of don't need to. It's already enabled. You just need to start using it. So as long as you've got that license, which most of the packages have, then you just need to go to teams.microsoft.com or install the desktop application, start creating your teams by hitting join or create a new team, and start using it. Essentially, that's what you would do. How much learning does it take for a small team to proficiently and efficiently use Teams? That's a wide question because you could get started, you could use it for chat and a little bit of file management and start to add tabs in for websites or really useful information, but you could then end up using it really, really aggressively and bringing a flow into it and things like that. So just to get started, it's really simple. In fact, I was talking to a client last week and they said that now all the schools have been closed, they're using Teams to keep in touch with the other students and to do a lot of the work in and collaborate and things like that. So it can be really easy, and these kids are just literally jumping on it and picking it up straight away. So it can be easy to get started, and you can build on that experience as well. Simon, is there any other questions coming in just while I scan over anything that I might not have covered?
I've just got one from Andrew that says, is it better to create a team via the 0635 group config in the overall 365 admin or direct in Teams itself?
I would typically do it in Teams itself. And again, just to point out the way the background happens, I would say
if I just finish off with that, Joe, because it's specifically, I'm thinking of the Outlook groups display on group email addresses. Does that make any difference?
Yes. Yes, and I don't know now. I'd need to look into that. I would normally suggest, but I need to check that point. But I'd normally suggest doing it from Teams. But I kind of get the idea of the group email address bit. But the idea behind Teams as well is to try and make it easier for organizations to just quickly and easily manage their own stuff without needing IT doing things all the time. So that's why it's great that you can just, a manager of a team can create a team, put their people in it, and then start using it fairly effectively without needing to go into different portals and different places to set things up in the group management. So I would typically suggest that, but I will look into the email function of it.
And is there also an argument that you should be using Teams rather than Outlook anyway? Am I missing
no,
something?
I think it's not Outlook as such that the question relates to. It's the fact that there's a groups option where you can create an Office 365 group, and part of that group then can be linked to a team and things. So that you can. So when you create a team, I think the point is you can actually create it from an existing group. So you can go in there and actually choose an existing Office 365 group. So if you've already done the Office 365 group, you can link a team to it. But when you create a team, it kind of does the opposite. It goes and creates the group for you as well. So I think that's why that's why the relevancy of the email address is quite good. But so I'll have to come back to that probably offline. But one of the things that point has reminded me is there was another question on my list, which was to do with this: how can attachments in Outlook be copied into Files tabs in Teams? Now, again, there's a couple of different ways to address this. Flow is one option, so you could have it that Microsoft Flow picks up an email and automatically drops the files into somewhere where you want them saved. That's one option. But the simpler, more straightforward option is if you've got a channel like this, then you can click on More Options to get email address. This will create an email address for the channel. So it's a random email address here, but if you copy that and create an alias in your email accounts, so let's say onboarding@reformedit.co.uk sends all of the emails to this address. So we'd copy that. If we send emails to that address now, anything that comes in will be posted in the posts, and any files will be dropped into the emails section on the files in the Files tab as well. Let me just quickly demonstrate that properly. 1 second. So if I send an email to that address and put uploading files to channel, client onboarding, that's downloading that file. Right, so attack.
Hello, Joe. You've frozen just for the minute. Hello, Joe. I've got you back.
Going back, right.
I've got you back. Yeah.
Yeah, Teams going a bit slow now.
Yeah, my end's gone all funny as well.
Okay, let me try and screen share again. 1 second. Have you got the screen share back,
Yeah,
Simon?
it's all back. It's all back.
Okay, so what I did then was I sent an email. I copied, not sure where we got to. So I copied the email address from the channel. So get email address for the channel. I copied that and sent an email to it with an attachment. And you can see that that's come straight into the channel. The file and in files now we have
You're breaking up again, my end, Joe.
Um, 1 second. I think
Well, that's better. You're back again. Back again, clearly.
Okay. Been struggling with the pressure of all this stuff, all these things. So now I've got, now I've uploaded the file, sent the file via email. Still struggle by the looks of it. And there's the file that was uploaded. So by using the get email address for a channel, that's a quick and easy way of sending an email and it dropping the files directly into the team, into the files tab. Hopefully you caught that last bit, Simon.
Yeah, I got the last bit, definitely. I've just got another question from Andrew. I think there's also now a Teams button in Outlook to push an email to a channel. Is that, do you know?
Yeah, possibly, but I haven't actually seen that myself. So yes, he may very well be right, but I've not seen it yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Andrew needs to help me with these Teams presentations. He
Yeah,
seems to have done a lot of research.
Andrew's got a wealth of information, definitely.
So yeah. Okay, all right. So I think we've covered that. So cost, like I say, Microsoft Teams is included with most of the Office 365 packages. Also, I don't know if anyone will have seen, but for anyone that isn't using Microsoft Teams or Office 365, Microsoft have recently announced that they're going to do a free of charge Teams version anyway for people, just because of the whole coronavirus stuff. Someone asked whether, just with 3 people, whether it's still worth using Teams. Yep, absolutely. With the reformed IT business, we were only 3 directors to start with. We're now a team of 5, but we used Teams from day one, just as an easy way to communicate and keep everything centralized and files in one place. So absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the vast majority of the questions, Simon, to be honest. So unless there's any more specific stuff come through.
Let me just note there's none on the questions and none on the chat neither. So if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask whilst the technology is holding up and we've still got Joe, then fire them in the chat box quick. Whilst I just give you an opportunity to do that, Joe, can you just share how people can, I've already put your LinkedIn profile in the chat box, but just share with people how they might get in touch with you if they want to work with you and the things that you do, just very briefly, please.
Yeah, so with the IT side of the business, we are very Midlands based with the IT for IT support, but we provide IT support and consultancy for all sorts of different sizes of businesses. And on my 5BI side, I do a lot of this sort of stuff, training and consultancy on using Microsoft Flow, Microsoft Power BI, which we haven't obviously even touched on, but I know some people will have already seen Microsoft Power BI and how powerful that can be. So I do consultancy on that, a lot of training and a lot of speaking. So, but in terms of getting in touch with me, I think my favorite option is LinkedIn, because I'm always on there, and I'll respond to any questions that people have got via LinkedIn. So if you shared that, that's great. You can also get in touch with me personally on my email address, which is joe@5bi.uk. So I'll drop that into the chat as well. So you can get hold of me from a consultancy or training perspective through there as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And I've got just one last question that's popped up. Does SharePoint use your OneDrive space quota?
They have separate quotas. So everyone in Office 365 will get, I believe it's a 1 terabyte OneDrive allowance for each person. And then SharePoint works, and I think this has been increased last year, but I think SharePoint gives you a standard allocation. I need to check exactly what it is. I think they give you a starting point of 1 terabyte now anyway as well for SharePoint. And then they add on an amount per user as well. So they are separate allowances. You have a SharePoint quota and you have a OneDrive quota per user.
Brilliant. Thank you. And that's it for the questions. Got lots of thank yous coming through, Joe. Again, brilliant session for me. There's one or two people saying their heads hurt and they need to watch the video back, which I think is always the case with stuff like this. But again, it's a fantastic session, and I have learned a huge amount, and I know, well, lots of other people have as well. And Andrew says, great stuff again, Joe. Going to be a double act. But anyway, thank you very much. There is a recording. I'll make sure it goes live. I'll leave the chat open for you to post anything in that you want to, Joe. And if anybody else has any questions, that's fantastic. And then, well, we'll see where we go. I know we've got a day penciled in to do a training, a whole day's training in June, subject to what happens with the coronavirus. But it's fantastic, Joe. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, and I'll hope to do something like this again soon.
No problem. Thank you.